Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another What I'm Reading Right Now video here on the channel. This is where every Friday I talk you through what I'm currently reading, what I'm going to be reading next and what I've already read, but not in that order because I know my own spiel. I've read 8 things since the last time we spoke. I'm really chuffed with that. We've got a trilogy to talk about in here, so I don't know that this is going to be too long, but let's see how we go. Let's dive right in. The first thing I finished last week, which therefore has completely gone missing from my life, it is somewhere, it might be in the shop behind me, I don't know. I finished Neil Shusterman's Scythe. I then finished The Thunderhead, and I also finished The Toll. These are the 3 books in that trilogy. I'm just going to hold up one of these as a placeholder for Scythe, but it is somewhere in the house. I had a good time rereading this trilogy. It went quicker than I thought it was going to, my first pro, and also I definitely feel like I got more out of it, or a different thing out of it this time around, which I wasn't expecting, which is good. Some of my conclusions from my original read of the series are the same, such as, why is this romance here? I don't want it. I reject this romance. There were a lot of other things that I definitely enjoyed, especially having read the short story collection Gleanings last year. Would I recommend reading this series? You'll have to watch the overbooked video that's going to be out in a few weeks to find out. But very quickly, if you haven't heard of these books before, these are set in a world post-mortality, so people no longer die. However, to keep populations down, scythes are effectively ordained, and they can glean people and make them be permanently dead. In book 1, we meet 2 individuals who are chosen to be scythe apprentices, and it goes on from there. I would say I'm much more interested in this series from the perspective of tell me more about this kind of dystopian future world, rather than tell me more about the characters in this world. But that's just me. We'll talk about it more in the future. I'm filming that today actually, so I'll be dressed the same. A book that very nearly did not get read was my reread of Shadows of the Short Days by Alexander Dan Vilhelmsson. This is a book set in Reykjavik, in a fantasy Reykjavik where we have the Hoodoo folk. I don't know, I don't speak Icelandic. We have these 2 characters kind of at the crux of this city that is at the boiling point, I guess, in to do with various different things going on. It's very magical. I didn't love this. I think partly it's the fact that it's translated, I believe, translated from Icelandic into English by Alexander Dan Vilhelmsson, and a lot of the Icelandic words are left in. Don't have a problem with that, but it makes it harder to read because you're constantly having to check back in the back what different words mean. I'm going to be interested to see whether reading Dreams Beneath a Midnight Sun, I think is the sequel. I'll put the cover up. I'm going to be interested to see whether reading that, which I'm reading next, is going to be as difficult, or if it'll be easier having read this, if it'll be slightly more accessible. I don't know. I'm basically reread this in order to read that. I will report back when both of them are done. Continuing on with my Edge Chronicles reading, I have finished Vox and Freeglader. These are the 2nd and 3rd books in the Rook. I don't actually know whether it's called the Rook Trilogy. I'm going to assume it is. I had a really good time reading these. I hadn't read Vox in many, many, many years. It's the book I've read probably the least often of this series. Freeglader is one of my absolute favourites. I appreciate I say that every week, but it is especially true with Freeglader. I love both of these. I actually wasn't meant to read Freeglader until next week, and then I read Vox and immediately knew I wanted to finish the trilogy. I cried reading these. I was talking about this on Discord, and I think it'll be interesting making the final video, because I do think there are some elements where if I stripped away my nostalgia lens on these, I wouldn't have such a good time. For instance, the fact that there are very few female characters. There are some really cool female characters in this world, but there are very few of them. I need to finish all of them and read the more recent ones and see where I'm at with it. But I am enjoying the nostalgia of rereading this series. After that, I finally, after 3 weeks, finished The Foxglove King by Hannah Witten. I'm not in that place where I wish I'd DNF'd, because it wasn't bad. It was just one of those things where I went, okay, great, that was a book. In a very similar way to how I felt about For the Wolf. This was better than For the Wolf, by a long shot, at least in my opinion, but it still very much felt like a book that sort of had some ideas in it, but broadly speaking was just another book of its kind. And we'll come on to the next book I read as well in a second, but there have been a lot of love triangles I've been reading lately, and I've realised my patience for love triangles is very low. I do not have the time for them. I lived through the Twilight years. I'm okay with no love triangles, or at least do the thing that happens in other books where they all end up together at the end. And I don't know that's not what's going to happen in these books, but oh boy, am I getting annoyed. Foxglove King does have some really interesting elements to it. It has death magic, which is one of my favourite things. I actually really enjoyed the main character. I liked the setup of the story. That kind of court politics, fish out of water stuff is always good to me. I just didn't feel like this book did anything to really tip it over the edge of being excellent. So maybe I'm being overly harsh because I didn't like For the Wolf. If you are thinking about picking up The Foxglove King when it comes out, I would say if you're set up to enjoy that kind of quite tropey, familiar kind of fantasy, you will enjoy this. If you're looking for something that totally blows everything out of the water and is brand new. I don't know that you'll find that. I don't know that I'm going to have enough to say on that one to make a full dedicated review. I might do something for Patreon. I'll see how I feel. And another finally kind of book, I finally finished Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn. This is the sequel to Legendborn. I've had this in my audiobook rotation for quite some time and I just hadn't managed to finish it. I knuckled down. I got to the end. It was a good time. I think it is too long, is my personal feeling. It's about 500 pages, I think, and it is just, there's a lot going on, and I don't know whether that's because this was pitched as a trilogy and maybe it needed to be 4 books. I don't know. There's a lot happening. There's some really good elements to it. There's some really interesting discussions and stuff happening in the pages of this book. I didn't love all of it, and I think it probably could have been shorter. My personal feeling. Maybe I just feel that with everything, could have been shorter at the moment. I personally enjoyed Legendborn more, but I think that might be just a timing and way of reading it, and the fact that I've read Legendborn twice, that might be the reasoning. I think also, again, love triangle stuff. I'm just not necessarily here for it. I think it's slightly more interesting in this one than it is in other things because it's a second book and the dynamic between the 2 other characters has been fleshed out a little bit more, and I feel like Tracy Deonn can do it. I think it can be pulled off at the end. I'm interested to read the next book and see how that goes. I won't say that I'll be rushing out to buy it immediately, but if the audiobook popped up again, I would listen to it. I'm currently in the middle of only one thing. I know, never happens. I needed an audiobook to pick up. I wanted to just have a novella. I wanted something I'd read before. I picked up The 4 Profound Weaves by R.B. Lemberg, and I actually really am enjoying it so far. I read this a few years ago before it came out and enjoyed it greatly and always wanted to read it again and have never really prioritised it, never really had the time. So this felt like a good time to do that. I'm working on a bit of a novella project at the moment. I wanted to do it, so I am doing it. That is what I'm doing. This is a world in which 2 older transgender people have to go and find out how to do the Weave of Death, which is like the last of these 4 profound weaves. It's really interesting. I don't know that I've got enough in my head of it to explain it right now, but I am enjoying it and we'll talk about it next week. Still to read this week, I have The Storm Beneath the Midnight Sun by Alexander Dan Wilhelmsen. I am trepidatious going into this. I know it's going to be a lot on my brain, but I have the time. I have the energy and I have the willpower and I'm gonna read it. Slightly easier in scope, but not necessarily in content, is Dry by Neil Shusterman and Jared Shusterman. This is the book they published sort of in the middle of when Scythe was coming out, if I remember correctly. I might be completely wrong. But this is about a drought, and this kind of like at the edge of the apocalypse, kids get caught up in an adventure, a terrible catastrophe. I have read this before. I'm reading it again for Overbooked to see if I actually want to review it for Overbooked or if I'm past the point where this book would be of interest to me. We'll see. And lastly, I am rereading Victory is Greater Than Death by Charlie Jane Anders. This is sci-fi, YA, this is the Unstoppable series. I remember very little of this book and I'm really excited to go back into this series and finish it off with the 3rd book in the trilogy in a few weeks. Peeking ahead into next week, things are actually looking a little bit simpler. I'm reading both of my copies of Lore Olympus, which are, you can't see them, but they are just here on my bookshelf ready to be read, and Thinner as well, which is a novella I hadn't read before but I've been wanting to for a while as I'm progressing through this novella project. I'm kind of at the point where my panicked end of last year reading schedule is slowly dipping away and I'm getting a bit more space and time to read things that I'm maybe more in a mood reading mode for. So that's exciting. New books. I haven't added anything new to my TBR in the last week. Clap, clap, clap for me. And I don't think I've actually taken anything off my TBR either, so let's not worry about that too much. However, I do have a few things that I'm eyeing up, things that have come out in kind of early March, late February that I do kind of want to buy, but they are all things that I've already read, so I think we're going to be okay in the book hauling sphere. New releases, The Faithless came out on the 7th. I really, really love this. This is the sequel to C.L. Clarke's The Unbroken. If you haven't already read The Unbroken, you absolutely should, and then if you haven't read The Faithless yet, you need to get yourself a copy. It's so fantastic. I had the best time with this as a sequel. And also The Foxglove King is out on the 9th, so it'll be out by the time you're watching this. I had a decent time. I don't know that I would wholeheartedly recommend it in the same way as I would recommend The Faithless. Picking up my laptop so that we can talk about the Nebula Awards, which the nominations have just been announced. I've read almost all of these novels. I haven't read 2 of the 6. So I've read Legends and Lattes and I did enjoy it. I don't know if I would give it best novel for last year, but I did really enjoy it. I would recommend. Spear by Nicola Griffith I haven't read, but it is on Scribd, so I will pick that up at some point in the future. Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher is one of my absolute favourite books of last year. Loved it, would recommend. Babel by R.F. Kuang I did also enjoy. I had a good time with it. I think my enjoyment of that was very different from my enjoyment of Nettle and Bone, but it doesn't mean I think it's a bad book. I think it's well worth giving a look if you haven't read it already. None of the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. Controversial opinion, perhaps, to say on the bookish internet. I don't love this series that much. It's fine. It's alright. it's fine. I wouldn't give it an award in this instance compared to these other nominations. And lastly, The Mountains in the Sea by Ray Naylor. I haven't read. I don't know anything about it. I'll look it up later. Bizarrely, the novellas I've only read A Prayer for the Crown Shy. All the other ones I haven't read. I will be looking them up though as part of this novella project, so more on that anon. And I think everything else I just haven't really encountered, which is odd for me. Normally Nebula Awards I can do a bit more than that, but not this year. We're talking novels alone. It must have been a very novelly year last year. Let me know your thoughts down below on the Nebula Award nominees, on what you've been reading, what you've been up to. I would love to hear from you. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also follow me on social media. Come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say a huge, enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to bonus content, live streams, and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. If you haven't heard of these, but quit suffice to say, and again, sort of apocalypse in the happening of the apocalypse. That's not how you say that.